All right, so imagine, picture this. You're a noblewoman living a life of privilege in 14th century France. But then tragedy strikes. Your husband, a respected nobleman, falsely accused of treason, publicly beheaded by the king. How would you react?
Most would mourn.
Exactly. But Jeanne de Clisson chose a different path.
A path of vengeance.
She transformed herself from a grieving widow to a fearsome pirate queen. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The incredible true story of Jeanne de Clisson.
The Lioness of Brittany.
Precisely. What I find so captivating about her story is how it intertwines with this huge historical event.
The 100 Years' War.
Yeah, exactly. You see her personal tragedy colliding head-on with the political turmoil of the time. It's a period where loyalties were constantly tested, right?
Absolutely.
And Jeanne's life, especially her marriage to Olivier de Clisson, becomes entangled with this high-stakes game of the Breton succession.
You can't separate the personal from the political in this story.
Exactly.
Right.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of Jeanne's revenge, let's set the stage. Jeanne was born in 1300 into a powerful family in Brittany.
A region caught in this tug of war between England and France.
Right in the thick of it. And to truly grasp the weight of her choices later on, we need to understand Brittany's position.
Imagine this. You're this independent duchy, constantly caught between two powerful kingdoms vying for control.
Always having to pick a side.
It was a breeding ground for political intrigue and shifting allegiances.
A dangerous place to be.
To say the least.
And Jeanne's story embodies this perfectly.
Yeah.
She navigated this complex world, marrying twice before meeting Olivier.
2 previous marriages.
Yeah, but it was her marriage to Olivier that truly thrust her onto the stage of history.
Olivier was a skilled military commander.
He was.
And he chose to side with the French king in this conflict.
It seemed like the strategic choice.
On the surface, at least, it proved to be a fatal decision.
A fatal decision. How so?
Olivier was captured by the English, and while he was eventually released, it sealed his fate.
Oh, how?
He was accused of treason by the French-backed claimant to the Duchy of Brittany.
So his own side turned on him.
In a way, yes. The evidence against him was flimsy at best. Clearly a move motivated by political maneuvering rather than genuine betrayal.
It makes you question the loyalties and motivations of everyone involved.
Absolutely. These were treacherous times.
Here was this respected nobleman, a loyal servant to the crown, betrayed by the very system he'd sworn to uphold.
And for Jeanne, it was a devastating blow.
I can only imagine.
The sources describe how Olivier's head was displayed on a pike in Nantes as a warning to others.
Oh.
Jeanne, along with her 2 sons, went to see it.
It's a chilling image, a testament to the brutality of the times.
It really highlights the stakes.
It does have that dramatic flair, though. Do you think the sources might be playing up the drama for effect?
That's a valid point. We always have to be mindful of potential biases and exaggeration.
Right. History is often written by the victors, as they say.
Exactly. But what remains undeniable is the emotional impact this event had on Jeanne.
It was the turning point.
The moment she transitioned from grieving widow to a woman fueled by a burning desire for revenge.
And she didn't just mourn quietly.
Not at all. This is where she takes control of her narrative.
She takes charge. She sold off practically everything she owned to raise an army.
She rallied Olivier's supporters, who were probably harboring their own resentment towards the French crown.
They had their own scores to settle.
Precisely.
And then she launches a surprise attack on Château de Flay.
A French-held castle.
This wasn't just a symbolic act of defiance, right?
Not at all. It was a calculated, brutal strike. Her forces massacred the garrison, leaving only a few survivors to spread the tale.
A message.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a clear message. Jeanne de Clisson was not someone to be trifled with.
You took my husband. Now I'm coming for everything you hold dear.
That's one way to put it. This act of calculated violence marked the beginning of her descent into what some might call piracy, others guerrilla warfare.
Whatever label you choose, it's an epic tale of revenge.
But she knew she couldn't stay in Brittany.
Why is that?
The French were after her, and she needed to find a way to strike back effectively.
So she sets her sights on the sea.
With her black-sailed fleet aptly named My Revenge.
Talk about a statement.
Jeanne took her grief and fury to the sea.
It really is a powerful image. This wasn't just about random acts of piracy or plunder.
No, this was personal. Each ship she captured, every raid was a direct act of defiance against the French crown.
A way to inflict pain on the very people who had taken everything from her.
Precisely.
Okay, we've set the stage. Jeanne de Clisson, the noblewoman turned warrior fueled by a burning desire for revenge. But how did she go from land-based attacks to becoming the fearsome pirate queen? That's where things get even more intriguing.
And that's a story for part 2.
Exactly. So stay tuned.
Jean's transformation from grieving widow to fearsome pirate queen. It's truly remarkable. She took to the sea with a vengeance, terrorizing French ships along the English Channel.
Like something straight out of a pirate adventure. You can almost picture her black ships emerging from the fog, striking fear into the hearts of French sailors. But wasn't this incredibly risky? Attacking the French crown directly, wouldn't that invite even stronger retaliation?
It was a high-stakes gamble. But Jean was shrewd. She wasn't just a force of brute strength. She was a brilliant strategist.
Oh, interesting.
She used the geography of the coastline to her advantage. The source material describes how she would hide her ships in these fog-shrouded coves and inlets, waiting for the opportune moment to strike.
So she turned the very landscape into her weapon.
Exactly. Using it to ambush unsuspecting French vessels.
And she didn't just strike randomly, did she? There was a method to her madness.
Precisely. She targeted French supply lines, disrupting the flow of goods and resources that fueled their war effort.
Ah, so she was hitting them where it hurt, both financially and strategically.
Exactly. Remember, the 100 Years' War wasn't just about winning battles. It was about logistics, about crippling your enemy's ability to sustain their campaign.
So she was playing the long game. And she was relentless. The historical accounts, though potentially embellished over time, paint a picture of a woman who instilled fear in the hearts of French sailors.
Indeed. The stories suggest she was ruthless, capturing ships, plundering cargo, and executing most of the crew, particularly any nobles on board.
Wow.
It's a brutal picture. And we have to approach these accounts with a critical eye, acknowledging the potential for propaganda and exaggeration.
Right, because as we said, history is written by the victors.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder if those tales of brutality were in part a form of psychological warfare. I mean, imagine being a French sailor, seeing those black ships on the horizon. You'd know that Jean de Clisson, the Lioness of Brittany, was coming for you.
Terror can be a powerful weapon. And that reputation, whether entirely accurate or amplified for effect, undoubtedly played a role in her success. She became a symbol of resistance.
A legend.
A figure both feared and admired.
But even the most fearsome warriors can face setbacks. The French crown couldn't ignore her attacks forever, could they?
Oh, of course not. They eventually sent a fleet after her, leading to a fierce naval battle in 1345.
A showdown.
While Jean and 2 of her sons managed to escape, her flagship, My Revenge, was sunk.
That must have been a devastating blow. Not just the loss of the ship, but the symbolic weight of it. It represented her entire mission, her raison d'etre.
Absolutely. And the escape itself was harrowing. They were adrift at sea for days, facing hunger, thirst, and exposure to the elements. Tragically, one of her sons perished during that ordeal.
Oh, wow.
It's a stark reminder of the personal sacrifices woven into this larger story of war and revenge.
It's incredible that she even survived that ordeal, to lose her ship, her son, and yet still find the strength to carry on.
That resilience, that unwavering determination is what sets Jean apart. She eventually made her way to England, and, as the source tells us, transitioned from operating as a pirate outside the law to becoming a privateer.
That's quite a shift, from outlaw to an official agent of the English crown. What prompted that change? Was it simply a matter of survival?
Perhaps, but it was also a strategic move. The English recognized her value, her skills as a naval commander, her reputation, her burning desire for revenge against the French. It was a mutually beneficial alliance.
They saw an opportunity.
Exactly. By granting her a letter of marque, they essentially legitimized her actions, giving her the backing of a powerful nation.
So privateering was like legalized piracy. They gave her permission to attack French ships and seize their cargo, with a portion of the spoils going to the English crown.
Essentially, yes. It was a clever way for kings and queens to wage war without spending a fortune.
And Jean thrived in this new role. King Edward III granted her lands and Brittany titles resources. She became an integral part of the English war machine. But even the most enduring quests for vengeance must eventually reach their conclusion. What became of Jean de Clisson after all those years at sea?
It's interesting, after years of waging war on the seas, Jean ultimately chose to step back from the life of a privateer. This woman who had become a symbol of vengeance, a force to be reckoned with, ultimately sought a different path.
It really makes you think, what prompted that shift? Was it simply exhaustion? Or did she finally achieve a sense of closure, a fulfillment of her quest for revenge?
It's hard to say for sure, but she was in her mid-50s by this point.
Oh, wow.
She'd endured unimaginable hardships, both physically and emotional.
Yeah.
Perhaps the toll it had taken, the sacrifices she'd made, finally pushed her toward a more peaceful existence.
She definitely earned some peace and quiet. The Lioness of Brittany, the pirate queen who challenged the might of the French crown.
Precisely. Her story resonated then, and it continues to capture our imaginations today. But what's also interesting is how she ultimately chose to live out her remaining years. In 1356, she sought refuge in England, and as the source tells us, married Sir Walter Bentley, a lieutenant to King Edward III.
Okay.
They settled down in a port town in Brittany that was under English control at the time.
So a return to a life of relative normalcy, a far cry from the black-sailed ships and bloody raids.
It is, and she lived to the relatively old age of 59, which, considering the era and her tumultuous life, was quite remarkable.
59. That's interesting. It seems the number 13 played a significant role throughout her life. 13 years married to Olivier, 13 years terrorizing the seas as a privateer.
It is rather poetic, isn't it?
It is. And while the exact cause of her death remains unknown, it's believed to have been from natural causes. So after a life filled with such drama, such intensity, Jeanne de Clisson ultimately found peace, both in life and hopefully in death.
But as with many historical figures, the line between fact and legend can be blurry. There are tales that say her ghost haunts the ruins of Chateau de Clisson, the castle she once shared with Olivier.
Oh, really?
Some even whisper that she's reunited with him in the afterlife, their tormented souls finding solace together.
Those stories add another layer to her already captivating narrative. But ghost stories aside, what can we learn from Jeanne de Clisson's extraordinary life? What does her story tell us about history, about human nature, about the enduring power of vengeance?
It certainly challenges our perceptions of women in medieval society. Here was a woman who defied expectations, who took control of her destiny in a world dominated by men. She was a wife, a mother, a warrior, a pirate, a privateer. She navigated the complexities of war and politics, leaving an indelible mark on history.
It really makes you rethink those traditional narratives.
It does. Her story compels us to acknowledge the agency and influence women held, even in those times. It also prompts us to reflect on the complexities of morality, especially in the context of war. Was Jean a hero or a villain? Was she a righteous avenger or a ruthless pirate?
There are no easy answers. It's a story painted in shades of gray.
Precisely. We can condemn her brutality while also acknowledging the profound injustice that fueled her actions. She was a product of her time, shaped by forces beyond her control.
And in the end, Jeanne de Clisson's story reminds us that history is not just about grand narratives and sweeping battles. It's about individual lives, personal choices, and the ripple effects those choices have on the world.
It's a testament to the power of the human spirit, both its capacity for love and its capacity for vengeance.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the life of Jeanne de Clisson, we're left with the lingering question. What seemingly insignificant events in our own lives might have ripple effects we never imagined? How might our choices, our actions, shape the world around us, for better or for worse?
It's a thought-provoking question, one worth pondering as we navigate our own journeys. And if you're as captivated by these explorations of history as we are, be sure to subscribe for more fascinating deep dives into the past.
We'll be back soon, ready to unearth another compelling story, another forgotten figure waiting to be rediscovered. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.